Hmm. Hello, everyone, and especially those who were not able to join us tonight in our Stamp Club meeting. We are going to be making it's kind of a pop-up shadow sort of box. It's got a frame, as you can see, and I've used a lot of products from what is it called? Hold on a minute. I have them out from the Nature Symphony dies primarily. But before I show you how to do this, I wanted to show you where I got the inspiration. And I think you guys know that I have been getting in a little bit more into the kits that Stampin' Up! Has. And if you look at this one, this is one that was brand new in, what month are we in? In January. And when I first saw it, because all you see is really this and then a couple of little pieces, I thought it was the coolest thing because you can see that there's a 3D sort of in the front and there's a shadow in the back. So I got the kit and I thought, why not? So I got the kit and there are three different designs. There's this one. Oh, cute. So pretty. It does come with pre-printed sentiments. I have not put the sentiments on yet because I'm probably going to use my own and stamp my own, but I really liked these. I thought they were really fun. So that's one. This is the second one. And again, I haven't put the sentiment on, but it's just really sweet. And it has the frame and it's all dimensionalized and all of that. And then the third one is this one. And it has the leaves. And I thought, oh my word, I could try and replicate something sort of kind of with leaves because these leaves reminded me of the Nature Symphony dies. That's the words that goes on the top if you want to use them. So I just started playing and I got out the dies and I sort of messed around and tried to figure out, how I could put it together. And this is what I came up with. And it is not hard. And it's really, I think, a versatile way of relooking at some of your dies. So I'm going to show you how to do this. And as I'm doing it, you're going to think to start looking at dies in your stash differently because you're going to find that there are a lot of dies that you can use for the frames, for the focal point, and your mind will spin. So this weekend, when we are all sitting at home because we can't get out of the snow, into the snow or the ice, you can go into your craft room and find things that you can actually make these from. All right, so I went ahead and pre-cut and got everything sort of together because I want to show you how to do this in a somewhat structured way. And I will tell you the different products that I'm going to use along the way. So we have a couple of different pieces of paper. The card base is a traditional 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 4.25. So it's a regular A2 card base. The bottom layer, so what you see over here as the frame in the background, is a piece of two-tone cardstock. This is actually Pretty Peacock. And I love this because there are two shades of Pretty Peacock. You're going to notice that I've already die cut one of the pieces that we're going to put on the front. And this is a great way to save paper. That's a pretty big piece, and I'll tell you the dimensions in just a second. But that easily accommodated having this die, which is the primary one that I'm using. It comes from Nature's Symphony dies. A lot of really cool dies in there. And no one is going to know that there's a hole in here. And I went ahead and I just die cut that, and you'll see that in a minute. This piece in the back measures 4 1/8 wide. So 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And for those of you who got the email about this meeting being scheduled, you know the dimensions. I'm going to, as I'm talking, I'm going to take these off so I don't get glue on them. I'm going to start building things, and I'm going to build it in a little bit of a different order, but I am going to go ahead and put this piece on the front. I really am enjoying using the two-tone cardstock. It is a little thinner than regular cardstock, and it is a little thicker than designer series paper. So it's a nice medium. Now, because I have die cut this out, I'm going to just go in, and where there are large pieces, I'm going to put a dab of glue. I want to get this tacked down just so it doesn't pop up. And then I'm going to do the best I can to center, make sure I know which side I'm opening on. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down. And when you do this, you can figure out what side of, if you use two-tone, what tone you want. You could put the dark, you could put the light. It's really whatever you want to do. And not all of that's going to stick down, and that's fine. If it bothers you, if there's a piece that is sticking up, you can condense it by just putting a very little bit of glue and then sticking that down. All right. The next couple of layers are going to be primarily from designer series paper. I'm going to mimic what I did here. It's just easier for my brain right now. So the one that's on the bottom is this, which happens to be the opposite side of what is going to go on the top. And both of those pieces are from the designer series paper collection, which I love. It's called Nature Walk, and it's in the new catalog. It is absolutely stunning. I have just opened it and started cutting it, and I have no regrets that I cut it because it's really, really, really pretty. So each of these pieces, these two, are the same size to start with. We're going to do a little bit of trimming, but they're the same size to start. And they both measure 4 wide, 5 1/4 high. All right. So find two pieces of designer series paper that you think work together well. You're going to see one is turned into a frame and the other one is going to be on the bottom. We're going to start with the one on the top first. So I'm going to put this piece to the side. And what I'm going to do is, since the designer series paper is going to be a frame and it's going to be put up on dimensionals, just to give it a little bit of height, I want to make this stronger. I want to give it a little bit of heft. So I've also got a piece of basic white. This is not thick basic white, just regular basic white. It's the same measurement as this piece. And I'm going to actually glue these two together. And again, this one's going to measure the same as the one on the left. So this is 4 by 5 1/4. The reason I'm doing that is I do want this to have a little bit more thickness when all is said and done. So I'm simply going to take the piece that I'm going to use as the frame, and I'm going to go around the edges. And that way, when I die cut my frame, I'm going to have some pieces in the middle that won't have glue. So I'll have some extra that I can use on another project. This is going to get die cut. We're going to use a die to actually cut out that frame. So you don't need to be perfect when you're putting these two pieces together. They don't need to be exactly aligned. We're now going to die cut this. And the reason is we need to see how big the final frame is going to be, meaning the part that has the writing, this piece. we need to understand how big that frame is going to be, because then we're going to trim this piece so that you don't see the second piece underneath. And it could depend on how big your piece is, how much you want to take off. This is where, if you're like me, you are going to just go around your craft room and find dies that you think would make good frames. Frames don't have to be rectangular. They could be circular. They could be ones that are very ornate. It is up to you. And whatever you find that will give you, some pretty good room in the middle to make your design, that's what I would go for. So this is one of my absolute favorite sets right now. It's the textured notes. And I decided that I would go ahead and use a couple of these. So you're going to see that we've got a die cut on the outside. There's a really cool design right on the outside that comes from these particular dies. And then also I cut out in the middle. So there's another die that I used. And we're going to mimic that. So the one that I used for the middle, this is the extra piece that I got when I cut it out before, is if you have these dies, it's the fourth smallest. And it's the one that looks like that. So I'm just going to grab that. And then the larger one, you can see the design that's on the edge. It's got the horizontal and vertical. It's the largest one, actually. And it's a pretty good size. So I am going to get some of this out of the way for just a minute. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our plates, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine here. These plates have been through a war, but they keep on trucking. I have ones that are new, and I just always hesitate. It's one of those, I'm going to get the most out of these that I possibly can before I give up the ghost. All right, so I'm just putting that die on so I know that it will cut a piece out. I have the washi tape that will not end. The mustache washi tape, which is an inside joke, except for those of you who are in the group. The mustache washi tape finally did run out. So now we have the do not open until Christmas, which is so small, but it continues. Watch, tonight it will probably run out. And I probably should have done this on the other one. I'm just taking off a little bit of the stick. I find that when you put this through a die cutting machine, it really presses into the designer series paper, and I don't want to rip it. I don't want to rip the designer series paper, so I am just going to tack that down. And while I go off camera, which will be really, really quick, I will leave you to stare at that, but I promise I will be right there, because I do have my die cutting machine just off camera. You're going to find that the fit is a little tighter than normal because you're putting through 2 layers, even though it's 2 layers, one of regular paper and one of designer series paper. Is just going to feel a little bit more tension when you put that through. All right, so we have our die cut piece. And you can see that the washi is not sticking to the designer series paper, which is very, very good. All right, so that die we can go ahead and put to the side. And then we want to cut out the window in the middle. And I'm going to use the smaller die to do that. And let me find where I put the smaller die. I should have probably brought out a magnetic plate. Oh, there she is. Okay. Unbelievable. All right. And this I'm just going to eyeball. You could do these both at the same time, meaning I could have put the bigger die and the smaller die on at the same time on the paper and run it through. When I'm trying to get these fairly precise and the dies are not right next to each other in size, I tend to do it this way just to try to get it a little bit more even. So I'm just going to cut that out. And I love the design on this paper. I think it is just really, really pretty. It's very, very versatile as well, masculine, feminine. You could do more ink blending on it. You could do more stamping on it. All right. So I've die cut everything else, so there won't be any more die cutting that I will need to do to finish up the card. Okay, so we're going to very gently take off this washi tape. There is a lot more designer series paper that has the washi tape on it this time versus when we just did the other die cut. And if you pull it right up against the paper, you're going to have a much better chance of not ripping your paper. And you can also try to get up underneath it like that and pull it off gently. Okay, so we have our frame. And because I didn't put any glue in the middle of those two pieces when I glued them together, what I also have are two pieces, if they will come apart, two pieces of paper that are pre-die cut that I can use on another project, which is kind of cool. So I'm just going to put them into a little stash and I will have them to work on later. So why I decided to do this frame first is let's look at the piece of paper that is going to go underneath. And you will see that it is going to hang over a little bit on the edges. I don't want that. I want to hide that completely. And if I had used a different die, maybe a circle die or something even skinnier, I would need to trim it up a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack these together so I can see how much is hanging over the edge. And it's about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to overcompensate because we're going to be hiding this piece behind that frame. And the thickness of the sides of the frame is plenty to take anything off. So we said it was about 1/8. I'm actually going to cut off 1/4. So I'm just going to cut off 1/4 of that piece of paper. I'll bring the frame back in. And I can put it on the back, whatever I want to do. And I can very well see that I'm going to be able to hide that. Nobody's going to notice that. The height is hanging over just a teeny bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut off, well, I'll cut off about 1/8 of an inch there. Just again, so that I know that I'm going to be able to get this piece completely hidden by the frame. That's why I also did not tack this piece down first, because I wasn't sure exactly what size I was going to need. Okay. And I think I'm going to be a little safe actually, and I'm just going to cut off a tad more from that second cut. So I took 1/8 off. I'm going to take another 1/8. So I've taken off about 1/4 just to give myself a little bit more room. Now that I know that this piece can be hidden, I'm going to go ahead and put that down. And again, I'm checking to make sure I have the card opening on the correct side. And I'm just going to go ahead and tack that down. And you're not going to need a lot. And I am going to stand up and look over this and try to get it about in the middle. Okay. All right. We are not going to put the frame on just yet, because now what we need to do is think about where the leaves are going to go. And if you look at this closely, you're going to see that underneath there's a full die cut that is on this piece. It's a guide. It's going to help you place the other pieces, mostly the same full die as the second layer, but we need to get that first layer down. And what I've done, I already did this so that you wouldn't be completely going crazy listening to me die cutting in the background. I went ahead and I die cut the pieces that I'm going to use on this card. They're the same pieces that I used over here. I've got two of the full in Pretty Peacock. This is the lighter, this is the darker of the two-tone. And then I do have one that's in basic white because I just wanted to give it a little bit of an offset. And this is the die that I used for that. So I'm going to mimic the order that I used before. And what I did on the sample is I put the lighter one down first. I thought that the darker would show a little bit better if the light was on the bottom. You can experiment. You do what you want to do. And what I'm going to do is I am just literally going to glue this down. And I'm going to get my frame out and kind of eyeball where this is going to end up. And what I want is let me put this down. Let's pretend that this frame is attached and it's up a little bit. I want some of those leaves to go under the frame because when this is put on top, the leaves are going to be elevated and it's going to just give a really cool effect where you're going to have parts of leaves that are coming over the frame. So it does not need to fit. It should not fit because we're going to use another die on the top to give it some lift. So I'm going to do it kind of like that. And I'm eyeballing this because we'll see how precise I get. And I could do a little, this is about, I can look on the square that's marked on the designer series paper and try to get it to go. You can put glue dots on this. I'm going to put glue. I think glue dots would drive me a little bit buggy. But one thing I will warn you is if you look at this die and the way that it cuts, it has holes in the paper. They're not cut through so that the leaf is cut out, but you get the veining in the paper. That means that there's a high probability that if I put glue on this and I push it down, I'm going to get glue on my fingers. But it's just something that you're going to have to either say you love and get over, or you can put glue dots on it and that will help you not get gluey. And I don't need to put glue on every single leaf because once this is stuck down, it should not move. To put the one on the top, I am going to use glue dots. I don't want the glue to seep through because that would really ruin the effect of the card. And I'm going to hold this up until I get a fairly good idea of where I want it to go. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it down. Tap on it kind of lightly if you have a die like this where it's going to potentially seep through. And you can do a quick check and see if it's going to work. And that's not bad. We're going to be able to make that work because I can still pop up where you can't see the full leaf. And it will give it some really cool texture. Okay. Now we can put the frame on. And I am going to use dimensionals for this. You could, if you want, you could use dimensional strips. And where I suggest you put the dimensionals would be closer to the inside than the out. That way you're not going to be able to see them very well. If you look at the card, I can't really see the dimensionals that I used. But I'm not going to use strips. I'm just going to use some dimensionals. Probably put about 4 on the side, the longer side. And then I'll put some on the shorter sides. And again, obviously, this is going to depend on what shape you have and whether you have the strips or single dimensionals, what your personal preference is. And you just do what you feel comfortable doing. And why we're doing this is we don't want to have any sagging in the frame, and we do want it to have a little bit of height so that we can continue to show sort of like a little shadow box. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the wax paper on all of these. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the frame on the top. And you will feel as you're doing this, you'll feel that the frame is a little more substantial than just a piece of cardstock, and definitely more substantial than just a piece of designer series paper. Almost there. And then I get crazy and I just quickly touch each one just to make sure I didn't leave any wax paper, and I didn't. And again, I'm going to come at this from the top, make sure my frame is right side up. I'm just looking at the words. You would also look at any kind of design that you have. And I'm trying the best I can, and then I'm going to let it go. I'm going to just put this on the back and give it a nice little burnish. Okay. So there we have the bones. Don't worry if these are sticking up, it's fine. It will actually look a little bit even more three-dimensional if you have some that aren't completely flat. Next step, we want to add the second piece. And where we're going when we're done is that the second piece is going to lay like that, but we're going to make sure that there's a little bit of curving going on and that the leaves are stuck down. Here's my suggestion. Use glue dots. And the reason to use the glue dots is 2 things. One, you're not going to get glue all over your fingers, and the glue dots are not going to show through. So even if you have this veining thing going on, they will not show through. You don't need to put a lot. So if you think about where do you want the glue dots to be? So I definitely want one right here because this leaf is going to be poking up. Probably one in here just to keep things settled. So if I put them down, I'm going to be putting them toward the bottom of the leaves, and I'm going to have some anchor points. I'm going to take the wax paper off of these before I put it down. You don't want to be sticking this die piece down and then trying to reach underneath and take the glue dot wax paper off. You will curse me. You will curse your die cut. You will not be a happy person. And that is not what we're going for. So I'm going to try one more. What you're going to notice is I am not putting one way down here. You really don't need to put one way down at the bottom because you're going to be tucking this little guy up underneath here. And when you do that, you've already anchored it. It's not going to go anywhere, especially if you have glue dots, you know, throughout. Okay. So I'm going to just take off the wax paper from these. I would not recommend a tape runner. You're not going to be able, I can't, maybe you can, control where the adhesive goes if you tried to put it on these leaves. I think I would lose my mind if I tried. I'm sure somebody could do it. And then what you're going to do, I'm going to put this corner in first. I just want to get something that's going to be stable. And I'm holding the leaf up. So I'm just putting that little corner in. And it's like you are mirroring what is down. So just go ahead and start putting the leaves down on top of the other ones. And what's kind of fun is if you don't get it exactly on top of the design, you get sort of this shadow effect. So even if you feel like you're not putting it where you should, as long as it's really close to the design that's underneath, it's going to look great. And that's not going anywhere. And then you can come back in and just use your thumb and give it a little bit of a curl. And it gives this really cool effect that the leaves are sort of growing in front of the frame. And because those glue dots are holding the leaves down, they're not going anywhere. They are staying put. And then for the ones that are a little shorter, I'm going to use my scissors and I'm just going to give those a little bit of a curl as well. This would work on so many shapes. You could use flowers, leaves. I think even some animals would be really cute if they, you know, had like a 3D impact. So you can see that you've still got that shadow underneath and you've also got the 3D. When I did this and I was mimicking the card kit only had one color leaf. This is what the card kit looked like. And it's very pretty. But I think it's pretty because there are 3 colors. Each one has its own color. So I thought, I really want to add something to this. I just want to give it a little bit more interest. And that's when I decided that I would pull in some more white because the cardstock base is white. I'm going to add white, which I didn't know at the time that I was putting this together. So I cut out another one of the dies. Obviously, I didn't use the entire die. I cut it off right in here. This is one reason that I really, really like these dies. They are very easy to pick apart. I can still use, I could cut it off here and I could use another piece. So they're very, very easy to use. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of pull that in and then tuck it. I'll tuck this one behind and I'll just add that as another bit of interest. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to put a couple of glue dots. I'm not going to put one way down at the bottom because again, I'm going to move that where I want it to go. But I do want this little guy, the one that I'll put over on the frame, I do want that to stick to the frame. So I am going to put one on there. and take off the wax paper again. Oh, and I got the entire glue dot. Okay, not a problem. My hands are so dry. My fingernails keep just literally breaking. Not that I've ever really had long fingernails. So getting glue dots off the wax paper can definitely be challenging. So I'm just going to stick the stem down in again, kind of holding these little pieces up. And I don't have anything to mimic this time because this is a completely different shape. But I'm going to stick that one down, and then I will do the same thing that I did on the last and just curl them up a little bit. And I don't know how this shows on camera, but this is just stinking cute. And it definitely will be fine in an envelope. I do suggest that you put a separate piece of probably copy paper because it's really thin, just 4¼ by 5½ right on the top when you mail it, and you'll be good to go. So the way I finish this off, and I have cheated, but I think you guys will forgive me for cheating. I have done some die cutting and stamping, and I'll show you exactly what I used. I thought this would be kind of fun to have a little post stamp, like a little postage stamp up at the top. So the dies that I used for that are the Perennial Postage dies. And they are some of my favorites. They're just really fun. A lot of possibilities. And I use the one that is the square. It's about maybe 1½ inch. Yeah, it's 1½ inch square. So I use that. I also used a new stamp set, which I haven't played around an awful lot with yet. It's called Addressed to You, and it's really meant to use on envelopes and to come up with some really cool envelopes, return address, maybe where you put the to from here, or the to, and then some really cute little designs. But I thought the happy and the birthday would look really cool. So I got another scrap from that same set of designer series paper, the Nature Walk, and I stamped happy birthday, and that's in Pretty Peacock. On this one, I used early espresso, and then I die cut it with the same 1½ inch postage stamp. And I wanted a little border. I wanted it to look a little bit more like a stamp. So I cut out the white one. And then on here, I am just going to trim off where those little indentations are. And that will give me just enough of a border so that that white die will actually show through. And it will look a little bit more like a stamp, a postage stamp. So I just trim those off, and then I'm going to adhere that right on, and that will be my little postage stamp. And I'm not going to put a lot on here, just trying to get it so that it will be in the middle. And then the last thing we're going to do is add a couple of embellishments, and we are all done. So there's my little postage stamp. And I like that it has, echoes of the Pretty Peacock. Very simple to put together. You could do the same thing with, rather than designer series paper, you could use cardstock. And to put this one on, I'm not going to do an awful lot. I'm going to put a glue dot in the upper left, and I'm going to put a dimensional on the lower right because I want it to be the same height as the frame. So lower right, I know that it's going to go right here for the dimensional. And I'll triple check that. Yep. And then up here, I'm going to put a glue dot. And that will secure it really well. And we'll get the wax paper off both. And then you have, freedom to put this wherever you want. I'm going to put mine a little bit different. On this card, I'm going to bring it in a little bit lower. We'll see how that works. And I'm just looking at the sides and trying to get them about even. And there we go. And then the pièce de résistance is adding a few of these. They're so cute. This little ladybug. They are Ladybug Epoxy. No, Ladybug Garden Epoxy shapes. They are so popular. They're sold out right now, but they're supposed to be back in stock next week. And I liked just tucking a little ladybug. I thought it gave a pop of color and it was so cute. I'm probably going to put a dimensional there just to hold that down, but we'll come back, or not a dimensional, a little glue dot. Well, maybe not. Maybe we'll let it go. And then these round epoxy embellishments I thought were the perfect thing as just a little, it almost looks like dew or raindrops. And it does catch your attention, I think, a little bit better in person than it may on camera. And they're just fun. So I'm sort of mimicking what I did, putting one kind of off on the frame, come in two different sizes, and then I'll put one right down in here. And I really think that red ladybug just adds so much interest and it's really, really cute. So I mimicked what I did. Obviously, the biggest difference is where I placed the postcard or the postage stamp, but there it is. And I know you're going to find dies that you already have, stamps you already have, and you're going to just use this idea and come up with a ton more. And I would really, really, really love to see what you do, because this is definitely one where there are endless possibilities. I hope you give it a try and talk to you soon.